Okay, as we get started this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the four horsemen of Revelation 6. Some people call it the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Before we get started, I just wanted to announce that we are starting another apologetics class in the Bible Institute. It's going to begin not this Thursday, but a week from this Thursday. So if you want to get registered for the apologetics class, I know a flyer went out today, so you can look at that flyer and find out what you need to do to get registered for the apologetics class. We're just finishing up a class on right to choose, right to life. And I'm gonna tell you what, this has been a powerful class. I mean, God has worked in some mighty ways in that class. So we do have a Bible Institute at Bethany Baptist Church, and we have some wonderful teachers. We brought in some great speakers, and it's just using the Word of God to help us live in this present life. So again, we have an apologetics class coming up, and would invite those of you who want to become more equipped at defending and standing up for the faith that you would join us in that apologetics class. All right. We're again talking about the four horsemen of Revelation chapter 6. And, you hear a lot about this. Movies have been made. I remember one of my favorite movies that I like to watch. It was a cowboy movie, and it was Clint Eastwood. He starred in the movie, and the title of the movie was Pale Rider, and it was actually based on the fourth horse of the apocalypse. So much has been said about these four horsemen. So this afternoon, we want to tell you the truth from the Word of God about these four horsemen. So you don't have to follow the theology of TV, Hollywood, or music. That we're going to tell you straight from the Bible what these four horsemen represent. So in order to understand the four horsemen, we have to go back to Revelation 5. And in Revelation 5, we read these words. Let me get to Revelation 5. And this is a scene in heaven, and John is writing, and John says in verse 1, "And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a scroll written within and on the back." And then he says, "Sealed with seven seals." So I have a picture on the screen of what John is describing. It's a scroll that's rolled up, and it has seven seals on it. And so it's important to understand this, especially as we get into Revelation 6, and we see these seals beginning to open. And this is relevant to these four horsemen. Now, if we went on to read, and I'm not going to read through chapter 5, just kind of highlight the key things in chapter 5. And we see that there was a search in heaven, on the earth, and below the earth to find someone who was worthy to open, going back, to open the scrolls. So there was a search that went on, and they wanted to find someone who was worthy to open these seals, loose these seals, and open the scroll. And John said that he looked high and low, but he couldn't find anybody. And he said he started to weep. And as he started to weep, one of the elders came up to him and said, "Don't cry." He said, "Because behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, he has conquered, so that he can open the scrolls opened the scroll and its 7 seals. So Jesus was found worthy to loose these seals and to open the scroll. And that's where we roll into now, Revelation 6, because, and I like what Revelation 5:12 says, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessings. He is the one that's able to open this scroll and to loose the seals. So that's kind of, again, if you really want to get into this, you really need to do an in-depth study on Revelation 5, because there's some powerful things happen in Revelation 5. But the bottom line is that, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Lamb, he's also referred to as the Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world. He is the one that's worthy to open these scrolls. So as we look at these 4 horsemen, and we see Jesus beginning to open, loose these seals and open the scroll, there's a couple things that we want to keep in mind, and I will refer back to these things as we go through the study this afternoon. There's 4 riders, right, on the horse. There's the white horse, there's a red horse, there's a black horse, and there's a pale horse, right? And they all have riders on them. So other than the first rider, which is, we're going to talk about that, because the first rider we're going to see is the Antichrist. Other than the first rider, the other 3 riders on the horses are talking about events, talking about wars, talking about famine, talking about death. So the first rider is actually a person, whereas the other 3 riders represent events. Now, these things, and so I want us to get some perspective on this, right? That when it shifts from horse to horse and rider to rider, that doesn't mean that what the previous rider represented is over. All that means is it just added to it. I heard a good example, and that is, if you hear, like think about all the people who dealt with the hurricane, right, down there in Florida, and all that they lost, right, and then they had to clean up from that hurricane. So the news reporters were there, and the news reporters were reporting, right, and as the hurricane moved up the coast, it was causing further destruction, and other people were affected by wind damage and floods and stuff like that. So just because the reporters and the reporting might have moved up to cover some of the new things that the hurricane was causing, that doesn't mean that those people who were initially affected by the hurricane, that doesn't mean all their problems went away, right? Just because the focus now shifted somewhere else, that doesn't mean that those people weren't still dealing with those issues. And so I want us to keep that in mind. Just because we move to the next horse, that doesn't mean that the previous things that happened are over. It means that it just added to it, right? It just added to the troubles, and it added to the woes that people were already experiencing. Now, I will say this, there's some good news in all of this. And the good news is that we as the church will not be here once these things kick off. So again, just trying to give you some perspective that when these 4 horsemen ride, the church will be gone. But I'm going to show you, I believe that as we look at some of the things that are happening in our world today, we can see that the foundation is being laid for these 4 horsemen. Now, remember when I taught on the last days and we talked about the signs of the time? Let me go back in Matthew 24 and let me read Matthew 24 verses 1 through 8 for you. Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the building of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, what shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming at the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet come. So he said that the end is not yet come. When you see these things, the end is not yet come. So when we look at these four riders, these four horsemen, that's the end, right? With the end, when we see those things happen, and like I said, we're not going to be here to see them, but when those things happen, that's the end. Jesus said these other things that you see are kind of precursors that are leading up to it. He says, for nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. And you may remember when I taught this before, Jesus said, all these things are the beginning of sorrows. That word sorrows is the Greek word odin, and that actually meant birth pain. You know, it was a word that was used for a woman who was having birth pain, odin. So Jesus said, when you see all these things happening, it's just like a woman who's pregnant with a child who is going through a time of pain, the pain of childbirth. And so Jesus is informing his disciples that these signs, what signs are that? You know, the signs where it says wars and rumors of wars, where it says nation rising against nation, famines, pestilence, earthquakes, you know, all these things are like birth pains, right? They're not the deliverance of the baby, but they're the birth pains that lead up to the deliverance. Now, what's one thing, and I'm sure that you ladies that have had babies, you know, have experienced this. I would say 99.9% of you have experienced this, and that is the closer that you got to childbirth, the more frequent and the more intense the pains became. The more frequent and the more intense the pains became. So what I want to do is I want to show how that we are living in a time that's leading up to these four horsemen of the apocalypse. And as the time gets closer for these four horsemen to come, things will become more frequent and they will become more intense. But remember what Jesus says, that this is not the end. This is not the end, that this is just leading up to the end. So these things that we see around us happening, you know, are good indications that the end is on the way. Now, I'm not one of these date setters, so I don't know when the end is going to be. I just know that, and I think we can safely say this, that we're closer to the end today than we were yesterday. I think we can safely say this, that the labor pains of the last days are becoming more frequent and more intense. So I'll repeat I'll say some of these things as I continue to go through the lesson this afternoon. So we see first there was a rider on the white horse. John records And I saw when the Lamb, now notice who's opening the seals, right? It's the Lamb. Now, let me go back and say one more thing to help us get some perspective on things too. And that is, many people believe, many theologians believe, that this scroll here was actually the title deed to the earth. That remember they looked high and low for somebody who could loose the seals and open the scroll. They couldn't find anybody. There was only one, the Lamb, the Lion. He was the only one that was able. And so many people believe that this is the title deed to the earth, and that there's some bad things getting ready to happen on this earth. Now, there's been bad things that have already happened, but during this time, they will be intense and continue to happen. So, and I saw when the Lamb, okay, Jesus, opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, and one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." All right, look, come on here. I'm giving you a peek into what's going to happen. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. So we see the rider on the first horse represents conquest. All right. And as we think about the conquest, white in the Bible, white horses symbolizes conquest. And that's what this rider represents. Now, there's a lot of debate as to who this rider is. Some people say that this rider is Jesus Christ because he's riding on a white horse. And so they say that it's Christ. But as we study this passage out, we see this is not Christ, but it's the Antichrist. In Revelation 19, it talks about Jesus coming back on a white horse. Okay, so let's do a real quick comparison between chapter 6 and chapter 19. In chapter 6, we see that Christ, what is his function? His function is to open the seals, right? That's his function. In chapter 19, he's riding on a white horse. In chapter 6, we see this rider is wearing a Stephanos, a victor's crown. In Revelation 19, the rider is wearing a diadem. You know, you remember that song, "Crown him with many crowns"? You remember that song? Well, that's diadem, you know, the crown of a king. Here we see in Revelation 6, the word is the crown of a victor. We see in Revelation 6, the rider is only wearing one crown. In Revelation 19, the rider is wearing many crowns. So that goes back to that song, right? Crown him with many crowns. All right. In Revelation 6, we see the rider has a bow with no arrows. That's interesting. And we're going to talk about that in a second. In Revelation 19, we see that when Jesus comes back at the end, that there's a sharp sword that proceeds out of his mouth, and he destroys the Antichrist and the armies of this world that have gathered against him. We see in Revelation 6, the context is conquest, that this rider is going forth to conquer. In Revelation 19, we see the context is righteous retribution, that the rider is coming to execute righteousness, whereas the rider in chapter 6 is coming to execute conquest. And then finally, we see that the rider in Revelation 6 initiates the tribulation, that 7-year tribulation period. And I like this. I like this. I like it. I like it. Revelation 19, Christ comes to conclude the tribulation. Christ comes to say, hey, that's it. That's it. It's over. And so, again, many people want to say that the rider here in Revelation 6 is Jesus Christ, but it's not Christ. As we have done this comparison here, you can see that it's not Christ, but it's the Antichrist. All right. Now notice, this is the Antichrist because look, he has a bow with no arrows. That's very important. Why would you have a bow with no arrows? What can you do with a bow? You know, you can't do anything with a bow unless you get close to somebody and start beating them with it, and that's not going to do a lot of good. A bow is not going to do a lot of good. So a bow with no arrows is, as far as war is concerned, is absolutely worthless. So what does this represent? This represents the Antichrist and how he will conquer. Now remember, he's on the white horse. That means he's going to conquer. How he's going to conquer without war. He will establish a world government without warfare. He will not triumph with military power, but the Bible says with lying deceptions, that he will deceive people and people will drink the Kool-Aid. And so he's not going. Now you look at Putin over there in Russia. What is he trying to do? He's trying to annex Ukraine. And how is he doing it? With military might, with military power. So generally, when people want to take control of something, what do? They execute military power in order to take over. Well, the Antichrist is not going to execute military power. He's going to come, the Bible says, with lying wonders, with deceit, with falsehoods, and that many people will follow him. If you think about it, just think about this for a second, saints, that this world is ripe for the Antichrist. There's no world leader. If you look at things, who has emerged as a leader in this world. And so this world is hungry for a world leader. Even as you look at different places around the world, no one has emerged as a world leader. And so when the Antichrist comes, he will sweep people off their feet. He will get people to follow him. And you know what? Even the Jewish people will follow him, because in Daniel chapter 9 and verse 7, he's going to make a covenant with the Jewish people, and he's going to allow them to rebuild the temple, to establish temple worship. For those of us who have had the opportunity to go to Israel, and I know y'all get tired of hearing me say this, but man, I want to go back again. I would love to go back again. If you go up on the Temple Mount, that the Muslims control the Temple Mount, and if somebody was to go up there and try to rebuild the temple, you would have World War III on your hands, because the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, that is the second most holy place for Muslims. The first place is Mecca, and this is the second most holy place for Muslims. So if you go up there and try to rebuild the temple, man, like I said, you're gonna have World War III on your hands. But just think, when the Antichrist comes along, according to the Bible, he's going to be able, he's going to be able to broker. Again, I don't know if he's going to just overpower the Muslims and just let the Jews build the temple on the Temple Mount, or if he's somehow going to get the Muslims and Jewish people to work together and let them build the temple. But that's going to be one of the most powerful things that the Antichrist does, is he's going to help the Jewish people reestablish that Old Testament worship. And if you were to go to Israel today, there's already plans to rebuild the temple. There's already plans to institute a lot of the temple procedures that were in place in the Old Testament. So all that's needed is for somebody to give the okay, is for somebody to give the go ahead, for them to do this, and then it's going to happen. Well, who is going to be able to do that? None other than this individual called the Antichrist. And when you look at this, the tribulation is 7 years. There's the first 3.5 years, and then there's the second 3.5 years. The first 3.5 years, many people believe, will be a time of peace, even though there's going to be all these things going on in the world, that it's going to be a time of peace. And so the rider on the white horse is the Antichrist, who conquers through peace, and he signs a covenant with the Jewish people, according to Daniel 9:27. Now, in the middle of the tribulation, he's going to break the covenant, and he's going to turn on the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are going to scatter. They're going to have to scatter, and so this is the Antichrist way that he comes to power. He has a bow with no arrow, which means that he is going to conquer peacefully, and the whole world will be ripe for him. And even let's see. Okay, I thought I had something here okay, that's coming a little later. So the world is going to be ripe for the Antichrist. I mean, again, just think of all the ways that we have set the stage for the Antichrist. One world government, things are headed in that direction. The world is hungry for a leader to emerge. Jewish people have already began putting things in place to rebuild the temple. So the stage has been set. Somebody asked a question, is the Antichrist here today? I don't know, but I would say that there's a good possibility that he is. Now, again, I'm not going to be a date setter, but I'm saying, as you look at things and the way things are lining up, it seems like he's here, and then all he's going to have to do is just step right into things. One of the things that I look at is this pandemic that we've been in, and how that when it first started, and you see how, look how quick the whole world was affected. The whole world basically shut down, right? And so it's kind of scary to think that the whole world could be shut down like that. And so that lets you know how, if things are in place, that lets you know how easy it would be for somebody just to step in and say, I got the answers, I got all the answers, and for people to follow that individual. All right, so that's the rider on the white horse. We move to the rider on the red horse, and when he had opened the second seal, so who is he? The Lamb, Jesus Christ. He's opening the seals, right? And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to, now look at this, to do what? Take peace. Wow. To take peace from the earth. What did the rider on the first horse do? He brought peace, right? This rider now is going to take peace. So I believe that this is the indication of the Antichrist turning on people, those that have accepted him, those that have followed him. Now notice that this rider on the red horse represents war and bloodshed, And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And what does the sword represent? The sword represents war. The sword represents bloodshed. So this rider was given a great sword. So again, I believe that this is all a part of the end time And a part of the program of the Antichrist is to introduce, peace and get the world to follow him. And then all of a sudden, he has this great ability to take peace from the earth. Now, notice what it says. It says he removed the peace. This rider is carrying a great sword and was given power to take peace from the earth. After offering false peace to the world, the Antichrist will cause much bloodshed. And then he shed blood. The rider was carrying a great sword. The Greek word macharia refers to a dagger type knife. It was used by soldiers in close hand-to-hand battle and was also used by murderers, terrorists, and kidnappers. So, what we're going to see, you think that there's bloodshed today. Think about, and I was, somebody was talking about the other day, Sandy Hook, and all those children their blood was shed, all those children that were killed. Think about all the blood that's being shed, by young men being killed in the streets, especially African-American men being killed in the streets. Think of all the blood that's being shed by the lives of these innocent babies in the womb whose lives are being taken, who are being killed in the womb. Bloodshed. We just see, bloodshed, but there's not going to be any bloodshed like we're going to see during this time. I mean, it will be, you think it's bad now, during this time, it's really going to be bad. And like I said, the good news, if there's any good news to be had, is that we as God's people will be out. We'll be out. So we won't be here when this will be taking place. So that's the rider on the red horse. And then we see the rider on the black horse in Revelation 6, 5, and 6. And when he opened the third seal, okay, who was he? Jesus Christ. When he opened the third seal, I heard the beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." So this black horse and the rider on the black horse represents famine. And just look at our world today. Man, people are starving left and right. There's worldwide famine. You would think that with all the resources in the world that we have, with all the food, man, we're paying farmers not to grow food. We're paying farmers to throw food away, right? All this food that's in the world, and yet and still there are people who are starving. I think of the Master's Kitchen, and every Friday that we're able to, feed the people in the community. That we are trying to eliminate hunger in Homewood. That on any day in Homewood, there shouldn't be anybody that's hungry. That they should be able to go get a meal somewhere, at a church or at a community center or somewhere. But even in spite of that, we see that there is famine, worldwide. And when you look at this, we first look at the balances. Notice that this rider is carrying balances. And so that means that there will be a time of rationing, right? The balances suggest that a rationing system would be in place. A penny, which is in the Greek denarius, equaled 1 day's wages. And a measure was for 1 meal. Therefore, 1 meal of wheat, 1 meal of wheat would be a day's wages. 3 meals of barley would be a day's wages. That might be based on the minimum wage of the day, a couple of slices of bread, a couple of slices. I didn't say a loaf now. A couple of slices of bread would be somewhere around $40. Now, again, Jesus said, talked about the birth pains, right? The Odin. The closer that you get to this time, the more frequent and the more intense. And you know what? Just think about, several months ago. So again, this is not beyond conceptualization. When they had to ration baby formula, right? That you couldn't find, baby formula on the shelves of this country. And if you could find it, look at what people had to pay for it. And, this is, an indication. Now, again, that shortage of the formula is not the rider on the black horse. So I'm saying that right now. It's not the rider on the black horse. But again, it's that birth pain, right? We can see how it's leading up to this happening. And so there will be a worldwide famine. But notice this. It says, and I often ask this question when I read this: why did it say, "Hurt not the oil and the wine"? Right? And I put these two views up here, but I'm leaning more heavily on one view than the other one. Basic food staples will become priceless luxuries. Olive oil and wine used in the preparation of cooking food, as well as the purification of water, will need to be carefully protected, which, that probably will happen. But more as you get closer to the end, more and more people are agreeing that when it says don't hurt the oil and the wine, that only wealthy people could afford oil and wine. So they will not be touched during this part of the tribulation. That people who are wealthy, that they'll be able to continue their lifestyle, right? Because again, the oil and the wine, those were things that only wealthy people, the luxurious things, the oil and the wine. All right, and so they will not be touched. And if you look at what's going to happen, the gap will widen between the wealthy and everybody else. The wealthy and everybody else. Now, notice this, and I believe that this is what's going to happen. The stage is being set for a worldwide financial system, right? The mark of the beast. In Revelation 13, 16 through 17, we read about the false prophet who causes people, small and great, rich and poor, free and bound, to receive the mark in their right hand or forehead. And without it, nobody could buy or sell. You can't buy, so during the tribulation period, that you will not be able to buy or sell. So if you have famine taking place in the world, and all of a sudden the Antichrist comes and he has this system and he says, well, you know what? You're not going to be able to eat if you don't take the mark. Then you can see how many people will receive the mark, because they won't be able to buy or sell. They won't be able to eat. There'll be a famine going on, and pretty much people will sell their souls, for food. So I thought that was interesting. Now notice here, he says that rich and the poor, will take the mark. So the rich will take it too. But again, they will have a reasonable portion of provision because they have money. But everybody else, will be caught up in this famine, and that they will have to take this mark, because without it, they can't buy or sell. Okay, then we see the the fourth horse, which is the rider on the pale horse, and this represents death. And when he heard, when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." So the he is Jesus Christ. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. So here was death and hell, and power was given unto them. Look at this, over a fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with beasts of the earth. So, I believe with all, with the bloodshed and the famine, and now this pale horse, a fourth part of the earth, a quarter of the earth's population will die. A quarter of the earth's population will die. John described the final horse as an ashen horse, chloros, from which the English word chlorophyll or chlorine derives, refers to a sickly pale yellow-green color. The horse's color vividly portrays the pale green pallor of death, characteristic of the decomposition of a corpse, according to John MacArthur. So power was given to this rider to kill 1/4 of the earth's population. Notice how it was done. By the sword, right? Well, we already looked at that. The red horse. By famine, we already seen that with the black horse. And now by death, the Greek word thanatos, meaning pestilence. This refers to worldwide diseases. Again, COVID-19 was not the pale rider, but it was the birth pain. It was the birth pain, right? COVID-19 was not the pale rider, but it was definitely the birth pain leading up to it. You look at all the people that died as a result of this pestilence, right? And I believe that again, I'm not a doctor, but I believe a lot of it was just mismanagement. But the fact is that a lot of people died. A whole lot of people died as a result of this disease. And then you can say, well, because I heard some people say, well, they had pre-existing conditions, and when they got it, it took them out of here. Well, the fact is that they probably did have a pre-existing condition, but what was it that came along that took them out? Well, it was this pestilence. And so, during this time, there's going to be a lot more pestilence. When you think of, all the pestilence that we've had that have killed people over the years, when you think about the Black Plague, and, you think about the AIDS epidemic, and there's been a lot of pestilence. Well, during this time, there's going to be pestilence that is that will not be a comparison to anything that we have ever experienced. And then wild beasts, as a result of war, famine, and disease, wild beasts, will be added to this devastation. Some people believe that this is symbolic, speaking of just these things that are going to kill people. And then other people say, well, no, it's referring to literal wild beasts that, when the famine takes place, there'll be a hunger shortage. And then, when you get into Revelation and you see, the earth being burned up, you see the rivers being, oceans being dried up or turning to blood. You see all that, where are the beasts going to go? Where are they going to get their, sustenance from? So many believe that the wild beasts will also begin to attack the population. I was watching the news today, I think it was somewhere in Wyoming, where these young boys got attacked by, I don't know if it was a bear or a couple bears, right? And probably what were the bears doing? The bears were probably just looking for some food, and they came, into contact with these young boys. So, wild beasts. So death, this fourth rider represents death. Now, as I close this out today, let's do a brief comparison between the four horsemen and Matthew 24, right? We looked at Matthew 24, where Jesus talked about the birth pains, right? The Odin, the birth pains, that the closer you come to the end, the more frequent and the more intense they get. Okay, so the rider on the white horse was the Antichrist. What did Jesus say in Matthew 24? For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And that's becoming more intense and more frequent, right? The rider on the red horse represented bloodshed and war, right? What did Jesus say? And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come. So again, these are the Odin, these are the birth pains. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. In Revelation 6, the black horse, we see that it represented famines. And what did Jesus say? And there shall be famines, right? There shall be famines. And the pale horse represented death or pestilence, right? And Jesus talked about pestilence. So, we can see, again, where are we in relationship to these riders of the four horses? Well, we are right at the, it's almost like, you build a church, right? And you have the vestibule, and then you have the sanctuary, where, the sanctuary is where you go in to worship. Well, I would say, where are we in relationship? We're in the vestibule. It's just a matter of time before the doors are open and we see these four riders come and do the devastation on this earth that they're going to bring. All right, that's my lesson for today on these four horsemen of the apocalypse. So let's see if we have any questions or not.